women should feel empowered to hold each other up.
We want to build a community to share other women's stories. Hi everyone, and welcome to Tea with TE. I'm Terri and this is Chantal Cantle. She is the head of people at Balderton Capital. Delighted to have you on the show today, Chantal. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for asking me.
And I obviously know you very well. We've known each other for a long time, but not everybody does. So do you want to just give us a bit of background on you and your career to date?
Yes, certainly. So I've been in the world of HR, people, talent, culture for, my goodness, it's probably getting on for 25 years now. So I like to keep that quiet. I joined the world of HR back in, I think, 1995, so a long time ago. And as you said, I'm at Balderton Capital now as their first head of people, and I'm coming up for my 2-year anniversary in September. So yeah, I've had a number of roles in between, starting out, as I said, back in 1995 in a quasi-government organisation where I started out as an assistant personnel officer. Back in the day, it was called personnel. And then I kind of went, my career steps kind of took off from then. And I then spent the majority of my career in investment banking and private equity, and then a little bit of a rodeo in a startup and onto Balderton.
Amazing. And obviously this podcast is all about female leadership, and I'd love for us to share and go into a bit more detail around how you found it being within finance in an HR role as a female leader. Yeah. You've obviously spent a lot of time within the financial services space. How has that been, and what's that journey been like for you? Because obviously it has changed a lot.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's unrecognizable now, I would say. If I look back to my time in the kind of late 90s, early 2000s, I mean, I was working in investment banking. I was looking after the front office. I was looking after equity trading, cash trading, equity capital markets, and sales trading. And I mean, it was a very, very different world than it is now. Very male dominated in that producing role. And then I would have said that probably 95% of the sort of HR team were female. So there was a very clear divide. And it used to be, and I would hear it said on the trading floor, the producers and non-essential staff. I mean, that was literally the way we were referred to. Wow. And it was very much a kind of, not tea and sympathy role, but I would say it was very transactional, very reactive. And it would be either periods of intense hiring, sort of graduate training schemes, then firing half of the people on those training schemes, and then doing big reduction in force initiatives within banking. So it was a really different world. And I would say, although there were some reasonably senior women in the sort of HR function, the senior roles that actually mattered, in inverted commas, were definitely very white, male, middle-aged when I look back. And I mean, thankfully, the world has moved on in the last 20 years. And a lot of the behaviours that were evident on the trading floor and within that senior management structure within banking are just, one, they're not acceptable, and two, they just don't exist anymore, which is great. But it's taken us a long time to get there, and yeah, it's a very different world, I'm pleased to say.
And how has obviously, I guess it's a different time, but in terms of comparing private equity and venture capital versus banking, would you say that's different for females in leadership roles?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is very different. I think investment banking, particularly the trading side of banking, and private equity are similar in that I think they are slightly behind the curve. I found VC a lot more progressive. There's a lot more visible senior females within VC, and I think it's around having that voice at the table. And I think, you know, times have changed, and there's a lot more understanding of the role that women can play within finance. And I think, you know, investment banking and private equity is catching up. But on the whole, my experience has been that VC, and in particular Balderton, are very progressive in their outlook and in their sort of championing of females in the leadership team.
Yeah, and that's probably brings us on to our next point, because I know that obviously, as you say, 2 years at Balderton. I know you talk very fondly of your time there.
Yeah.
But thinking about the 2 years and what it was like when you joined, and any measures that you've been able to put in place, obviously relating to women in diverse roles, or women in finance, how has that been for you during your time?
So as I said, I've been here for 2 years, and I was the first head of people within Balderton. So I came in and took over the sort of people function from the finance function, who had, you know, managed it extremely well in the absence of having a more nuanced approach to the people space. During that time, we grew from, I think, 54 employees to over 70, and I think there was a real push to recognise that we did have quite a male-dominated partnership structure. And just before I joined, we hired our first female partner, which is obviously a step in the right direction. However, there are still 8 other male partners in that partnership. But I think since I joined, we've definitely taken a real look at the whole diversity piece, which would be looking at ethnic diversity, diversity of age, diversity of socioeconomic background, and of course the gender diversity. We're doing pretty well on the gender diversity. If you look at it, we've got a number of females in the leadership team. So we've got a female CFO, we've got a female chief marketing officer, a female chief talent officer, and we've also got a number of quite senior principals and senior associates within our investment team. Where I think we need to carry on the work is around social diversity. There's still a little bit of an intellectual snobbery within VC. So in terms of initiatives, we have partnered with a number of local schools and sixth forms in the area, and that's something that's very dear to me, because I think socioeconomic movement is one of the biggest hurdles, whether you're female, male, an ethnic minority, disabled, etc. That's a really, something that will really hold you back, or can hold you back. So as I say, we partnered with a number of local schools, which has been so rewarding, having sixth formers come in and spend time here and see that VC is actually a welcoming environment for them. We've also signed up with 10,000 Black interns, so we use that, as well as Diversity VC and Future VC to look for interns and analysts to join us. So we're trying to improve that pipeline, because I think it's lazy hiring when people say, oh, well, these people just don't apply. Well, that's because you're not making the environment welcoming for them, and you're not going the extra mile. So by contacting different schools in the area, talking to universities, we're making VC an attractive place for everybody to work, and not just white, male, middle-class individuals.
Yeah, and I think talent attraction isn't just about what you're projecting and what people see. Obviously, if you want to attract diverse talent, I think you have to actively seek it out at the same time, which obviously sounds like you're doing. Yeah. And as a female leader, you're a mother yourself, as we've already talked about. How was it for you when you were going through motherhood and trying to manage a career at the same time?
it was a long time ago for me now. So I've got two sons, one of which is 17 and one of whom is 15. So every age of children brings its challenges. Now, back when I had my children, it was very different. So I remember at the time I asked if I could go back to work part-time 3 days a week, and I was just told a flat no, that doesn't meet the needs of the business. And that is something that just does not happen nowadays. So I did take a little bit of time out, and then went back into the workforce, as we would say, a couple of years after having my sons. I mean, look, it's a challenge, and maybe this is old-fashioned, but I feel it's very difficult to have it all. Something has to give, and to be giving 100% to both family and career is tough. And I'm lucky in that Balderton is an incredibly supportive place to work. Work-life balance is great. We have a hybrid working environment, which suits me in that I like to come to the office. I'm a people person. It would be quite strange if I wanted to stay at home and not interact with anybody. Also, it means I can escape my kids during the long summer holidays. But equally, I really value the quiet time I do get at home when the boys are at school. But I think having a supportive work environment is key, and that has changed so much in the last 15, 20 years. So yeah, that work-life balance is super important. And for me, I think to make Balderton the VC employer of choice, you need to be progressive in your policies around time off, etc., parental leave.
Yeah, and we've talked about that, particularly with things like the menopause or with reproductive health. I know that there are some initiatives that we've been talking about that you've been doing at Balderton, which I think definitely helpful. I think there are lots of females out there that struggle with the different times that we go through in our lives. And like you say, sometimes if you're trying for a baby, that will probably take more priority than your work does. But how do you then?
It should as well. And these are important life-changing events. And I think Balderton very much wants to be supportive in both a practical and emotional sense. And you mentioned some of the initiatives that I would say I've been kind of instrumental in bringing to Balderton, one of which would be Fatifa. We partnered with Fatifa, I think probably 2 months ago, which covers female and male reproductive health, fertility, parenthood, and also menopause. So it's fully inclusive. And as an employee of Balderton, I can use it for a partner at home, which is also great. And we as a firm allow people to join the platform, and then people will have a lifetime allowance, a sum of money that can be used for any kind of issues around fertility, menopause, etc., which is great. And I think that as an initiative that was met really positively with the team here, which has been great.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of places out there that don't know how to implement these things, or even just provide a platform. I think as a female, you kind of probably expected to go after and find things out on your own. And if you have got an employer, why not provide an opportunity where it makes things easier for people?
I think for us as well, it was important to provide a solution that was totally inclusive. So it would include partners at home, regardless of gender. And it covered the kind of age range. And I think menopause is something that really has only started to be talked about in the last couple of years. As with many kind of reproductive things, a lot of people just don't want to discuss. And actually, it's a part of life that 50% of the population are going to go through. So, I think it's important. And for Balderton, it was about striking a balance around, we're a caring and compassionate employer who have a number of excellent policies around parental leave and support and guidance, but also wanting to help people as they start their journey, with fertility. And I think it's a high proportion of people who have fertility issues. So to be able to help people around their reproductive health, and then also to help people who are maybe at the end of their journey, like the people, women of my age who in the past would have just had to sort of put up with some of the symptoms of menopause. So the idea that we talk about it openly is great. And we're also not saying to people, we want you to delay having children. And we're saying we provide excellent policies and procedures around caring for you when you do have a child and giving you paid time off, but also we're happy to help you on your journey, which I think is so important to me.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's interesting because do you feel like as a female, it's only driven by the fact that there are more females within business that are leading that charge? Or do you think there is a receptiveness to these initiatives across the board, particularly thinking about the world that you're in and how that, I imagine, is taken up?
Yeah, I mean, look, I can speak for Balderton, obviously 100%. And I think we've got a very progressive and caring leadership team. When we were looking at various options around FATIFA and fertility options, our managing partner was super involved in all of the discussions. And, we looked at it from an ethical standpoint. The messaging, what were we trying to communicate to people? So at Balderton, absolutely, our kind of ops committee is involved in all of these decisions, and that happens to be our operating partner and managing partner, who are male, and myself and our CFO Fiona. And we had lively debates, but it was always from a very inclusive, proactive standpoint. I also, have quite a good network within other VCs, other heads of HR, etc. So I know that this is something that other VCs are also looking to implement. Like to think that Balderson's a bit of a trailblazer, but again, I've got a good network of other heads of people, and we all discuss what we're doing, because there's no point in reinventing the wheel. And it's always good to be able to discuss various initiatives and what we feel are negative or positive points. Yeah. So I think the world is changing. And I wonder whether sometimes COVID kind of propelled us into this new world where people did care about their well-being and their work-life balance, their mental health. These are things that were never discussed before. And that's changed a hell of a lot in the last 5 years for the better.
Which is crazy, I think, to think
Insane.
that it's only but it has really accelerated throughout that period, I think. And I know something that you're very passionate about, and again, further initiatives within Balderton, but it is wellness and managing burnout as a woman. Like you say, it's hard to have it all and to juggle these things, and then to feel like you potentially don't want to let one thing slide, because obviously you have to be juggling everything at the same time. What type of initiatives, or is there anything that you want to share in terms of that? Because I think that is quite useful for people, and just feeling like you can voice that within your world. I do think that's hard. People don't want to, especially as a woman. I think we are less inclined to speak out saying, I feel like I'm burning out, because of the perception.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, maybe there's also a kind of generational thing. I think, that millennials and younger people are far more likely to look at the employer value proposition and want to know that things around mental health, well-being are taken seriously. And we're lucky at Balderton that we partnered with the Mind Advisory, and they came in and did some workshops for us around mental health, around signposting. I mean, that was incredibly important. And I went to, we had sessions for managers and sessions for the team. And I mean, it was so sort of empowering to see people sitting and sharing their experiences of mental illness or mental well-being, and how to navigate your way through situations, and to know that there are people that you can talk to, and that mental health is as important as physical health. There's no difference. And I think we've come from a position where mental health and stress or anxiety depression wasn't talked about, because it was seen as such a disability. And in fact, if you had a broken leg, you wouldn't say, well, run it off. You would get treatment. It's crazy though. It really does, as my mum would say, beg a belief at times. If you're mentally unwell, that's as debilitating as any other illness, and it needs to be taken as seriously as someone having cancer or whatever it may be. So I think having the opportunity to partner with the Mind Advisory was great, because also, so I'm not a trained psychiatrist or a psychologist or a therapist, but obviously people come to talk to me. And as an individual with my own mental health, for me to take on all of that is extremely time consuming, and it's emotionally draining. So to be able to signpost people towards trained professionals who can help is, it's great. And I would definitely say that that's made a massive difference with some of my workload, for sure.
I've actually heard, so I've obviously been in the HR world for a long time, and I remember one of my networks saying to me, HR can be the loneliest role within a business.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm lucky in that I kind of have finance as a little bit of my extended team, and I work with two amazing women, Helen and Fiona, and they are my sounding board and allow me to vent sometimes. And I think it's really important to have that. And I thank my lucky stars that I work with them every day. They're amazing. But I'd also say I've worked hard over the years to really build up my HR people network, both within the VC, PE and investment banking world, and in the startup world. And that is really, really useful. Actually, I just wanted to say, when we were talking about mental health, I also think we need to look at the balance in terms of wellness in general. And I just wanted to mention another initiative that we brought in, which has been super successful at Balderton. We partnered with a company called Hika. I'm not sure whether you've heard of them, but they're a wellness platform, and it allows firms like us to give a monthly subscription to individuals, a monthly amount of money to spend on this platform. And it's crazy. There are so many different wellness initiatives, ranging from plants and ginger shots to rock climbing, to massage, to, some of the things, massage, guided meditation, walking meditation. There's such a vast array of things on the platform to use. It's brilliant. And that went down really well with people. And I think sends out a good message that not only do we care about people's well-being, we're putting some money into it, and we're providing this wellness experience for everybody. I even went in a flotation tank, Terri.
Oh, nice.
I'd
actually love to do that.
It was amazing. And also it's something I could try, and I wasn't having to pay for it out of my own pocket as well, which means I've kind of expanded my horizons in terms of wellness. But I think the wellness piece needs to fit with your mental health.
But that's interesting in itself, right? Because I think the way that people perceive what they do to look after their mental health is very different. For me, it would be going for a run. So I think something like that is showing the flexibility around diversity as well. And obviously being mindful that diversity doesn't just mean taking half an afternoon off or everyone going out for a drink. I think it's
exactly
just being a little bit different with it.
It means different wellness and mental health, mental well-being mean different things to different people. I sometimes need to have a blast on the Peloton, but then other times I want to go for a massage. So it's what works for you as an individual, and that varies across the genders, the generations. So it's important that you don't look for a one-size-fits-all approach.
And I think that is hopefully something that people can take away from this. So I think everyone, we're getting there as a generation, I think, but we are probably quite one-dimensional when we do think about how we can help people in that sense. But things like you've talked about with the fertility thinking or menopause, I think it's great to know that we're in an environment where people are a bit more open and talking about that. Thinking about your journey and just going back a little bit to that, I know that we've both talked about it, and I think it's pivotal for females, even still today, for kind of reaching where they want to get to in terms of their career, is having sponsors and having allies and having mentors. whether they're the same sex or not doesn't matter. I think it's still just having people that will help you on your journey. Have you had any of those throughout your career, and any ones that you think have really helped with shaping what your career looks like today?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't say that the person I'm thinking about is necessarily a formal mentor, but it was somebody I worked with, 15 years ago now, who is a CEO and who's been incredibly important in my journey. Now, if there's anything I'm unsure of, and he's not working in a people or an HR capacity, but if there's anything I'm unsure of, anything I need to talk about, if I just need someone to give me a kick up the bum, he's the first person that I think about, and I can be totally myself, totally honest with him, and he gives great advice. Whether I choose to take it is another thing, but no, he's been massively instrumental in my journey, and also I think in helping me deal with things around imposter syndrome. So just having somebody who's got your back, I think, is very important. And he's always one to sort of be introducing me to people. He helps me with my networking. So that has been very important to me. And just having somebody in your corner. But then I've also mentioned, Fiona, who I work really closely with. She's a total dream to work with. She's a really strong female ally. We work very closely on lots of initiatives together. And it's refreshing to find a really strong CFO who has such a sort of people side to her. So as I say, I was, the first head of HR, but I stepped into a fairly strong foundation, which has been built by Fiona and Helen. So yeah, having Fiona in my corner is super important. And then we have our operating partner, Adrian, is incredibly supportive. Again, an ally for females in finance. I work very closely with Rana, who is our female partner, and it's great to partner with her on various things. And I always know when I go to the partner meeting that sometimes I will pre-game my partner meeting by discussing the initiative I want to propose with Rana and kind of getting her steer or her kind of understanding of it before I go in. And then I just know I'm going in with some support already, in my back pocket. So you kind of feel like you're more on the front foot. But I'm a firm believer in mentorship, in coaching and supporting, other females and other males in the workplace. And I speak to a lot of more junior HR and people professionals, and help them in their career journey.
Which probably leads very well into the next point, which is really thinking about, obviously we have come a long way as a generation, and I think for hopefully prompting more females to step outside of their comfort zone and to get into venture capital or private equity. And obviously I appreciate that probably does need to start earlier, and we can only start doing that now really to be able to change the mold. But thinking about VC and women in leadership roles, are there any ideas that you think could help to drive that with women in leadership roles longer term?
Yeah, I think we need to sort of break the mold of what women or what females feel is the role model for working in finance or in VC, private equity. Often I think we have an idea that you need to be, a real ball breaker, it's all kind of 80s power suits and big mobile phones. And actually it couldn't be further from that. I think if you're, regardless of what gender you are, I think if you are an expert in your field, if you can exude some gravitas when you're in a room, I think those are two really important things. Like I think within finance, and I'm sure it's the same in other professions, although I can't speak for them, there's nowhere to hide. So you better be good at your job. And that doesn't matter whether you're a male or a female, you need to know your stuff. And I think that's very important, that you feel a sense of empowerment and you understand that you I mean, the way I look at it is I think in terms of the people space, I always feel that when I go into those partner meetings, there's a pretty good chance that I know a little bit more about the topic we're discussing than they do. And I think you need to own that, and you need to be confident, and you need to leave that imposter syndrome at the door. And I mean, I'm guilty of not doing that at times, and thinking, oh, well, why would people want to listen to me? Or, you know, what have I got to offer? And actually, I've got 25 years experience to offer. And I do know a little bit more than, you know, I'm not saying I know about investing, but I definitely know about the people space. And I know how to make Balderton the VC employer of choice. And I know how to attract and retain the top talent. And if I'm doing that, I feel I'm doing my job well. So I think you need to kind of carve out your niche and be super confident of what you can add. And your voice will be heard if you're talking sense.
Yes. And if you're so passionate about it, like you are, I
am really
right there.
I'm super passionate. I mean, I could talk about the people space all day long. I mean, every day is a joy to me. It really is. And that sounds so crazy. If I'd heard somebody 20 years ago saying that, I'd be like, yeah, whatever, you're lying. But that's generally how I feel. Balderton is an amazing place to work. I've got amazing colleagues. You know, the culture here is fantastic. I'd like to think I do drive some of that, but, you know, we've just got a really supportive partnership as well. So I can't complain, Terri, which is odd for me because, you know, I like to complain.
No, never. Thank you. That was really helpful. I think if we're looking forward, and as we do move forward, what are your hopes and aspirations? Say you've got female grandchildren. What are your hopes and aspirations for women in leadership and what that looks like in the future?
Yeah, I mean, look, I hope things continue along the current trajectory. I'm in no way in competition with male colleagues, but I do want there to be an equal level playing field. I don't want, you know, if I am lucky enough to have grandchildren, we're a very male-dominated family, though, I have to say, but fingers crossed. If I'm lucky enough to have grandchildren, you know, I want them to see that traditionally male occupations are open to them, and you know, they are just as good as anybody else. So that's important to me. But I think we've started on the right track. But things take time. They do take time. You're not going to change society overnight. And it makes me laugh. I look at my boys sometimes and I think, you're probably going to be the most discriminated against category. You're white, reasonably privileged, and you're male, and that's going to be tough for you. But then I look back and I think, really, we're only trying to redress the balance from 2000 years or more of being discriminated against. And I think that goes for women, it goes for age, it goes for disability. Yeah. So I would like to think that we've started to break the mold, and we'll continue to do that. Yeah,
I think we've come a long way with racial diversity too. I think
Absolutely.
That's something that everyone hopefully is like, that you can see there's a different generation that's ahead of us. I think thinking about your boys and how men can help, what do you think they can do without making them feel like it's a disadvantage to them, right? That's what we want. We just want a bit of equity.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not about who's best. And, you know, and there will be things that men are going to be better at than women are. And I get that. You know, I'm not saying that, but I think if you look at, say, football, for instance, my kids are obviously passionate about Arsenal. There's always football and cricket on. And I've overheard a couple of times the boys going, oh yeah, but you know, women's football is not any good. And I've had to say to them, it's not about comparing. The two games are very different, physically, mentally, everything about them is different. It's two different games. We're not asking, if they weren't two different games, and if we were completely equal in terms of physicality, we'd play mixed games, and we don't for a reason. I'm not going to get in the ring with Mike Tyson, but there's no reason why two women can't get in a ring. It's a completely different thing. So I have to kind of pull my kids up at times, because they can sometimes be a little bit disparaging around sport in particular. But, you know, things are, when I look back, when I was a child, I would never have been allowed to play football at school. We weren't allowed to wear trousers at school, Terri. You know, things have changed a lot. And that it can only keep getting better, I think. But men, I think, can definitely support women and be allies for women, and understand that women are essentially different than men. Our drivers are different. The way we process information is different, and that's not better or worse. But I think they need to have an understanding of the way women deal with things in the workplace. Sometimes if you've got a group of men, it's like herding cats. And I often say that to myself. But I do think men can be proactive in being allies for females. And I think it's about giving women a voice at the table and understanding that voice may be different than some of the other voices in the room. But that, to me, is around, life's rich tapestry and diversity of thought and understanding. So I think, men can make things a little bit more welcoming sometimes for women. I know when I first joined Balderton, I used to feel incredibly nervous going into the partner meeting. Mm-hmm. Now, admittedly, after 2 years, I know the individuals a lot better. I have a more personal relationship with each of them. However, when I first went in, for me, it felt incredibly kind of argumentative at times and uncomfortable. And I think I remember saying to Adrian, our operating partner, I'm not going to shout over anybody. That's just not the way I operate. If I've got something to say, I will voice my opinion, but I'm not going to shout over somebody else. And I'm only going to speak if I've got something I feel is relevant. I don't go in just to hear the sound of my own voice. And I think it's just understanding that, women maybe operate slightly differently than men. And that's important in getting the best out of both sides of the coin, I think.
That's so interesting. I feel like we could talk about that for a lot longer. I am conscious of time. I do think that's something that we don't talk about a lot. I do think that actually how we respond to things and how we manage our emotions, and because there's normally a lot of alphas in a room and there's an expectation that
they think they're alphas.
Yeah.
They think they're alphas. Yeah. And it's about, there's a lot of kind of, there's a lot of testosterone flying around in some of these meetings. And I'm like, hold on, guys.
Maybe we can help with the balance.
Let's just take a step back. There's room for everybody's view, but we don't all have to shout at each other. And also they're not shouting because they're angry, but I just find sometimes it's a very assertive environment.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much. I think
Pleasure.
Everyone who listens to this is really going to enjoy it. I hope that your sons enjoy listening too.
No, they're very impressed.
They will.
Very impressed.
As you know, this is Tea with Tea.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, how do you take your tea?
How do I like my tea? Well, I'm quite fussy, funnily enough. Now, I have to have my milk in first. It has to be, I know, milk always goes in first. I don't like it made in a pot. It has to be with a tea bag, otherwise it gets too cold too quickly. And the water has to be totally boiling. So at work, we have a boiling water tap, and I'm not convinced it's 100 degrees. So I will always boil the kettle to make my own tea. And I don't like it too strong. So it has to be kind of on the milky side and not too strong. And I did see on Instagram once, there's a color chart of how people like their toast and how people like their tea. Yeah. And with one of my very best friends, we still have arguments about what is the correct strength for tea, because I don't like mine to taste of tea bag. It needs to be perfect for me to drink it. Insofar as I would rather wrestle the cup and tea bag away from someone and make it myself. Imagine being married to me, Terri.
No. And also, I'm really glad that I'm not working with you in the office. If I were Fiona or Helen, I'd be like, sorry, Chantal, you can marry.
Don't offer to make that woman a cup of tea, because she's a nightmare. And it's amazing that John has remained married to me for 20 years, isn't it? Given my restrictive tea making.
Does he make you tea?
He does make me tea, but I have to ask for it though. I find he makes my son a cup of tea and forgets me. But exactly. I'm not making it easy for him, am I? But I do love a cup of tea. It's my favorite drink.
Mine too. I love a cup of tea. Thank you so much. Honestly, that was great. And I'm sure that anyone listening will really enjoy it. So appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thank you. And thanks for inviting me. It's been great.
Welcome. Speak to you soon.